Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inky Thinkers podcast. Today, we're continuing my sub-series of Beyond the Gate, where I try to challenge some of these old gatekeeping notions I think might be a little wrong, to say the least. But today, I have a very special guest on, my first transgender guest actually on this podcast, which I'm very honored and pleased to say, because I wanted to do something to highlight some of the gatekeeping still going on, some of the prejudice still going on that might be a bit nonsensical, to say the least, again, regarding trans people in the tattoo world, because trans people have been in tattoos for as long as I've been around, at least, and that's at least a few decades. Not to reveal too much about my own age, but before I ramble on too much, Luka, would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me, Mads. Hello, my name is Luka Weinberger. I'm an American tattoo artist. I've been tattooing for 7 years now, and also I am transgender and non-binary, so I use they, them pronouns.
Yeah, Luka, you've been. I always want to ask tattoo artists this because I can't help myself, and this is probably the only question I will always use from my interview guide that I sent out before an interview. What got you into tattooing and tattoos respectively? Like, what got you into profession and what got you into the art?
Yeah, no, it's a long story for sure.
I think
So
we have time.
yeah, okay, yeah, we got yeah, so my last name's Weinberger. Like I'm Jewish. Tattooing was kind of like taboo growing
Mm.
up. I wasn't really allowed around people who were tattooed. I wasn't very familiar with tattoo culture, but for some reason I was always drawing and I was always drawing figures with tattoos and piercings. Like I think because it wasn't allowed, I was so transfixed and I even like tried like piercing myself with like safety pins, like on my fingers and stuff. And
Jeez.
I would do like light scarification and draw little patterns on my arms with like sewing needles. And I tried to tattoo myself when I was like 9, I think. My mom freak. And it's just something I was always drawn to. And I also know that my Oma, who was a Holocaust survivor, she did have a tattoo from her time in the camps, and she did get it
Yeah,
removed eventually.
that's not the kind that's voluntary.
Yeah, yeah. So like what I'd like to tell people is that I'm one of two people in my family that were tattooed, but I'm the only one who got mine of my own free will.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a very important distinction there. And for those that don't know, the Nazis would tattoo Jews and other people that got thrown into that, but mainly Jewish prisoners that got thrown into their infamous concentration camps during the Second World War, and how when they occupied many European countries and invaded most of Europe. And these tattoos will often be their prisoner serial numbers.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
not to go
no, it
too
was
much
for
into this topic, they would force Jewish prisoners to tattoo them, other
Yeah,
prisoners. So it's a whole horrible, evil mess, to be honest. Uh,
yeah. So there was like yeah a lot of heavy and negative thoughts towards
mm,
tattooing. It was seen as like a desecration of the body. It
yeah.
was seen as disrespectful. So there was already a more negative tone when I was growing up towards tattooing. But I did know for some reason I wanted to get tattooed as soon as I turned 18. And I did, and it was like not a great experience. I felt very
Oh,
uncomfortable. Like the
mine
artist was
wasn't
very,
either.
yeah, I think when you're doing your first tattoo and you're 18 and it's a walk-in tattoo, like it's not going to be a great time.
I think
But
at
I,
least I don't know if you're my age, but at least back in the early 2000s, it was still a bit like the 90s. It was very much like it's not going to be a great time the first time if you weren't lucky to find a great artist, and most of us weren't.
yeah, no, I got my first tattoo in 2006, and it had only
Oh,
been in very recent years that it was became illegal to reuse needles here in the US. Like it was still very underregulated. Like tattoos could kind of do whatever they want still. So that meant like not great practices in a lot of areas. Um,
mm,
but yeah, so I got tattooed and I still like wanted more tattoos. And at some point I had had a difficult experience in losing a friend and I wanted a tattoo to memorialize her. And I found that it kind of like brought me out of a really like bad
mm,
depression. And also it was like a very violent, sudden way that she died. And I was there. So there was some PTSD. And I felt that it was actually like helping me. So that kind of was filed away in the back of my head that,
mm.
as I became an artist, and I went more into storyboards, concept art for film production. Uh, and I thought that was really fun, but and I was getting to do a lot of different interesting work, but I wasn't like doing anything that I thought could like help anybody.
Hmm.
And something interesting about my family is even though we're a bunch of like musicians and stuff, like we're also people who want to like help and we want to
Oh,
like do something that helps other people. So whether it's like Eastern medicine or body work, massage therapy, something, there's always like something else, some other facet
mm.
of like what we do with our lives that involves healing. So as time went on, I felt myself getting uh, less and less interested in the work I was doing, despite getting like some like pretty nice gigs. And then I decided to take a trip to Berlin actually, because
All
my
right.
Oma was in Germany, and I really wanted to go to Germany and just kind of like revisit that place because she never went back after she left. Um, and I made a lot of friends, and I was drawing a lot, and they said, "Wow, those would make cool tattoos." I'm like, I've never seen tattoos that look like this, so I don't know. But then I started noticing in Berlin, like the tattoos are very different, like
Mm.
black work, you know? And I'd never
Yeah.
really seen black work in California. It was a lot more traditional tattooing
Mm.
or like black and gray realism, not really what I did drawing wise. And they're like, yeah, no, if you could learn how to tattoo and tattoo this way, like you could probably like make a living doing it. And I was like, I mean, that's really cool. I never thought about that. I'd always thought tattoos were cool, but not really where my mind had been. They said, no, seriously, we know someone in Long Beach with a shop, and I was living in the Long Beach area in California. They're
That's
like,
fun.
get you an apprenticeship. Like, hold on, we're gonna email him right now. And
Nice.
when I got back to the US, I had an interview for an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was Black Tie Affair in Artesia, California. And Jared's the owner, and he's like, yeah, you know, like you have really solid work, like your portfolio is good. Like if you want to learn how to tattoo, we'll teach you how to tattoo.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought, you know what? If I end up hating it, I will at least have tried something new and just tried a new avenue for my art. And I loved it immediately. Uh, and I never went back. Like I love tattooing.
I mean, it does become a lifestyle for most people that are really into it. Like, oh, so you strike me as that. Like, you don't strike me as one of, because there's one place where I do get gatekeeping at times. That's people that just are like, no, no, I'm just going to take a break and do tattooing for like a year or two, and then I'm going to go back to graphic design. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. It's
I think
barely an
so.
apprenticeship back in the day, man. Fuck off. But
Right? Yeah,
no,
I get
you
clients.
don't strike me as that. I would say
No,
you strike me as someone with quite a lot more passion for the industry and the profession and the art form.
yeah, no, the more I got into it, the more I found like, oh, maybe like this could be where I finally like
Fit
belong
in.
because everyone's really nerdy and everyone's just really like, I mean, not everyone, but the people I've encountered are
I
really
mean,
like
I'm not.
kind,
I mean, a lot more than
passionate.
people think are quite nerdy within the tattoo world. A lot more people than people think are very nerdy within the tattoo world.
Yeah, like we were all those kids who were just like drawing like in the margins of our homework and we
Mm.
were just like, you know, practicing body art at young ages and we're told that we were mutilating ourselves, but we were already like it was kind of already encoded in us, I think, a little bit because
Yeah.
tattooing is such an old practice.
Mm.
And I would like to think that if you're already doing that at such a young age, like maybe you're just getting in touch with your ancestor. Like maybe there's someone in your lineage generations back that tattooed and
I
you're
mean,
getting
I'm not a spiritual guy myself, so I would, from a sociological perspective at least, I would rather say that when you start doing that, because a lot of kids do that, I will get absolutely a lot of kids start drawing on themselves and doing other stuff like this. I think it's what's to do with this innate tendency to express, self-express, and to embody identity. You know, we did as much as some people would like to say. So the body is more than just a flesh vehicle. It's also a way we communicate, even without verbal communication, who we are and our identity. And I think, as I said, from a social perspective, that tendency starts earlier than you might think. I think it's very smart that we don't allow permanent changes for kids, more, for example, with tattoos, because it changes around a lot until you sort of find your footing. Like, as you know
Mhm.
as well as a tattoo artist, most people that really know what they want with a tattoo are often a lot older than 21 or 22.
Yeah.
There are some that are young and don't regret tattoos when they're very young and get them when they're only 18, 19. I've not regretted any of mine. I'm one of those weird exceptions, but there's this tendency. I can absolutely recognize that even if you remove the spiritual connection you see from it, this tendency absolutely exists that even kids want to express themselves through their body and who
Yes.
they are. And that's also why kids, which might come a bit close to what we're going to talk about today, play around with what they look like and how they dress and their gender identity to some extent as well. Like I don't think any male child, traditionally speaking, in a biological sense, have not tried on heels their mom had or dress maybe or something like that. I think that's very normal. Like it's this old obscure subsection of psychology and anthropology where they hated everything that wasn't a cis white man that sort of made all these things bizarre and abnormal. But in modern social science, these things are seen as the most normal thing you could expect a child to do, to be like, you know what? I've not done that yet. I'm gonna do that.
Has it been like has anyone ever like labeled it an actual like stage of development? Like,
I don't know enough about the pedagogical research into it to want to speak out about that too much, but I know that it's at least recognized as quite normal to play around with. I mean, even if the kid might not label it like that, it is to a large extent playing around a bit with how they express their own identity and gender, perhaps. You know, and this doesn't mean that a kid is necessarily trans or anything. Like they could be completely cis, but it still happens.
mhm,
It's still a thing they do. It's quite natural to us to play around with who am I? What am I? Even
yeah.
from a young age. We can't answer these questions when we're very young, so often we end up mimicking parents. So if you have a parent that's one of them often traditionally cis female and the other cis male, you try out both of them tradition often, no
Hmm.
matter what you are yourself.
Yeah. And so
But
let's try something else completely,
yeah, exactly. That
Let's
also
go
happens,
in a completely
Like
different
fuck, man, I
direction.
think I wanted to be an elf for a few years at one point when I was a kid.
Like I was always very much like somewhere in between. I like
Yeah.
to wear really butch clothing, but I also want to accessorize like a lot with
Yeah.
like clip-on earrings all over and like 34,000 sparkling necklaces. And it's always somewhere in between.
Like people can hear you coming.
Now it's just the way my feet stop as I walk.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Not
Yeah,
so
part of
much
being queer is
the
walking
jewelry store hanging around your neck.
fast. I had to get quieter, more stealthy.
Okay, fair enough. Like I was more like, but I've done that too, the whole, oh, right now I want to be edgy, so I'm gonna have a pentagram necklace and stuff like that. If anybody can imagine that, me at 14. But I would still wear a blue checkered shirt and a nice t-shirt underneath that. So it was a weird thing of not being goth, but wearing goth jewelry.
Yeah. Oh, I love that look. Like really,
Oh, I
you know,
don't. Looking
Brooks
back at it,
Brother, but then
no.
like so tatted up with like huge, like gauged ears and like all it looks clean. I think it looks stellar.
I mean, yeah, to each their own. Not how I want to look, but yeah. But I do recognize also in myself the whole thing of like, I think what's harmed me more throughout the years, jumping a bit ahead now, possibly, so I apologize to anybody that might get confused by my ramblings today. But the thing is, I've had to figure out what my idea of being masculine is when I realized that I'm cisgender, you could say. I mean, of course, that realization in my case came quite naturally because I fit into that, and that's happens. I mean, that's the luck of the roll of the dice, there, luck of the draw. Cisgendered kid man grew up into that, you know there wasn't much epiphany in that sense, as there might be for others. But for me, always being more reflexive and more challenging of norms and stuff like that, I did think about things like, well, what's a man to me? I don't want to be one of these butch assholes to just go and slap strange women on the fucking ass. I don't want to be out there beating up guys I don't agree with and shit like that. No. Uh, so, there's some figure out. There's a lot of stuff that sometimes could be like, where mainly other cisgendered men would be like, oh, isn't that a bit like, it's so toxic in that way.
Mhm.
Even something like, I have a beard. I like to use oil in that sometimes. Some men will fucking be like, oh, using oil in it, what are you some kind of like, and then they use the F word.
Yeah.
No, I just like it to smell nice, because you know who also likes it to smell nice? Women. And for it to not
Yep.
scratch their face up.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to have it soft.
Yes, for sure. I,
I'm a
I mean,
soft
like,
guy. I might have a large exterior, but I'm a softie. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, no, like I think it's a really good way to put it, like trying to like figure out what your style of masculinity
Yeah.
is, or like where on the spectrum of masculinity you are,
Exactly,
because
because
like, when people
exactly a good
say,
point. It's a spectrum, both femininity and masculinity,
yeah,
and just gender identity in general. It's a massive spectrum. And just before anybody comes at me or Luca in any comments or anything, that's agreed upon universally by social
yes,
sciences, at least by
if you're
anything
comparing,
that is recognized scientific knowledge. So don't give me Jordan Peterson bullshit because he's not recognized. He's just had his license revoked and everything in Canada. No,
sorry, dude,
not recognized. That's not a good guy to come back at anybody with. But by social sciences at large,
yeah.
just about everyone agrees that a gender identity is a massive spectrum,
Yeah.
and that
And when you're taking like two men and you're comparing their level of masculinity,
it's so weird.
whether it's to like lift one up or to bring one down, you are supporting that. Like you are
Yeah, yeah,
supporting that
exactly.
gender is a spectrum. If there is more than like man, woman, if there are subsections of manness and there are subsections of femaleness, like you agree.
I mean, yeah, in a backdoor sort of way, yeah, absolutely. Way to checkmate them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're absolutely right there, Luca. That most of these guys, even though in the act of denying the spectrum, sometimes sort of prove it, right?
Yes,
Like, it's very
exactly.
strange. Goodbye. Oh, you're just a beta cuck. Well, you've just agreed to there being a different type of man to you. So thank you,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes. Thank you for agreeing that there's more than a binary. Thank
Exactly.
you.
I mean, but that's also the other thing that I think this might be closer to your heart as a person that actually has this lived experience. It's a weird thing to think that there being something other than man and woman and a strict binary harms people. Like that's baffled social scientists over the last at least 3 decades when we moved a bit out of the more negatively biased social sciences of the 80s and 70s and 60s and before that. It's baffled a lot of them that are like that there's this attack almost seen, especially by cis white men, but also by women, uh, on their identity for there being something else out there, which is
Yeah.
strange to me, which is so
And
strange.
and it's like it kind of is like it's not an attack on individuals, it's attacking like a way of thinking. It's
Yeah.
attacking like a dominating culture. Like a dominating like Judeo-Christian white European like
Well,
colonist cultural
it's not
mindset.
even attacking that. Like, attacking's the wrong word because it's just
It
it's
yeah, it's like it's
indirectly critiquing it
forcing
by
inquiry.
existing, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's forcing you to actually like look at it. And it's forcing you to not look outward because I think one of the like dominating like supporting structures of that culture is like you don't look inside. You look
Mm,
outside. You look outside for love, you look outside for God and spirit. You look outside for leadership, like you don't look inward.
mm,
And we are saying like you have to look inward. And when you do, you're going to find stuff and some of it might be hard, some of it might be like not supported outside of yourself. It may not be
mm,
supported by your family structure, it may not be supported by your community or state or country's structure. But like once you know it, you can't unknow it. And there can be a
yeah.
lot of power in that, and there can be a lot of fear in that. But when
Mm,
people are saying, how dare you like be yourself? How dare you overcomplicate our world?
yeah.
That can be very challenging because
Which
it's
is
telling
which is
them
the
like
irony
it
of
could
it because
be it could be that
there's a big
you're
irony
right.
here when we're thinking about the tattoo industry there. And I don't want to throw you to the sharks, but in the order of actually talking to you about this, I inadvertently will happen. It inadvertently will happen. But I can imagine you've met quite some prejudice in the tattoo industry for being trans and non-binary.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like attacks. Mostly it's kind of giving like all lives matter a little bit. Like
Uh,
why are you even thinking this? Why are you even like making this a big deal? There's so many other things going on in the world. Like why are you kind of
that level of
kicking up the space?
stupidity. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like there's so many other
That's
things to think
moronic.
about. Yeah. And I converse with these people online, which like maybe I shouldn't. I can't
Oh
help
yeah,
myself.
yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, no,
just for
there's
your
a
own
lot going
mental health sake, I know I'm not a psychologist, but I'm pretty psychology adjacent. I wouldn't.
on. Yeah, it's hard though because like
Yeah, I get
part of being trans and part of being like an older trans person, anyone over
it.
the age of 30 is considered an older trans person. Well, because
Mm.
historically we don't live long. So I'm considered an elder, and like that part of that is being very visible and being
Mm.
willing to engage in those topics so that if anyone younger and trans is like seeing these things, they see that someone's standing up for them. They see that someone's willing to like
Yeah.
take the hit a little bit. And that they're not just
Mm.
going to be reading all this like hateful stuff and it's going to go unchecked. Like I don't want because it's everywhere.
But it's just
And
also that idea of challenging, people's traditional way of thinking. That's exactly what people that got tattoos used to do as well. And
yes,
yet people can't make this connection. Sometimes when you talk to people in the tattoo industry or tattoo community, like, no, they're still weird and they're freaks to trans people. Like, no, that's exactly what we used to be called
yeah.
just for being
We
tattooed.
all we all were in the circus together, dude.
Exactly.
We were all the tattooed, the gender fuckery people, the
Yeah.
bearded ladies, like all of us were in there together in the
Exactly, and people that are very heavily modded to an extent, really heavily covered in tattoos, very heavily covered in piercings, gauges, whatever it is. That's still the same shit. You're still part of this, changing the body to fit your authentic self. That's what we're all doing. That's what you're doing with how you want to represent yourself and the way it reflects your gender identity, the way you want it to reflect your gender identity. That's how I'm doing it, but how I would like to look, what I find masculine, what I would like to look like as myself. You know that
yes,
it's
no, it
all the
is all
same,
gender
which
affirming.
is as weirdly complicated as identity is, it's also strangely paradoxically simple in a way.
Yes. No, it is. And it's like I feel bad for some people because they're still thinking so hierarchically.
Hmm.
Like there can only be one thing that we care about. There can be only one fire we need to put out and everything else has to wait. And like
I would say the order is wrong then,
like
because if we all agree and can let each other live and be ourselves, then we can also solve all the other shit.
well, I mean, yeah, that's the commonality between like various like minority populations is that we believe in like mutual liberation. We believe that like none of us are free until we're all free. We
Yeah.
believe in like helping each other. Like I am not part of your culture, I'm not part of your community, but I'm gonna fucking fight for you, just like
Yeah.
you're gonna fucking fight for me. And it's
Hmm.
not all of us just only tackling one thing at a time because that's all we have space for.
I mean, we
Like, no,
sadly don't always see it happen as beautifully and idealistically as you explained it there, but I do see a lot more of it from marginalized groups that they will support other marginalized communities and groups and identities. So you're absolutely right. It is it pains me even more when I see somebody from a marginalized group hate on another one. Like that pains me even
no.
more because there's already so much of that going in the direction of both of them, and then you see one of them turn on the other one and be like, no,
Yeah,
fuck these guys over there. No, fuck the guys that hate on both of you.
I know. I know. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm
I'm sorry to be
trans.
pedantic,
I'm
man.
I'm
It's
Jewish.
just,
I'm female. Like, I see it all the time. Like,
mm,
in each of these groups, I see like tearing down and othering a different group in order to like further like legitimize yourself, or like there's a fear that people will care
mm,
less for you if there's another
yeah.
group that people might care for more. So you tear
It's a
them down.
weird thing, right? Because is this that it's this finite idea of like, oh, we only have so much as we give some to them, we have less for the rest. That's not how it works with this. Like
Yeah. No, that's
but it's
scarcity.
a weird idea people have that it works that way, and thus they're like, oh no, we can't give them anymore. Let's step back some years and think about when gay marriage was up in these states, because we can't talk about when it was up in Denmark because that's way a lot further back, and that I wasn't alive then. Sorry to say, people, but that's been legal here since the 80s. But when it was up in the States, and we were
Yeah.
young people, we were in our 20s at that time.
Mhm. Yeah.
A lot of people got interviewed and were like, no, because they have those rights. If we give them to the queers, then they didn't get them the right way, and they have too much, and they're getting why? That makes no sense. It's not some cake you're slicing off. You're just saying it's more like, oh, we've watered this plant, now we're watering this plant.
Hmm.
This not the other bullshit. It's not going to take away from the other one. It's giving both water and sustain it and things to sustain it. It's not a fucking two dogs where you're not starving one to feed the other for fuck's sake. But
Yeah.
that's how people
And
think
that's
it is,
what's
and
taught
that's
though.
baffling, you know.
Yeah, but that scarcity is what's taught and it keeps
Mm,
us all down and it keeps us all like pitted against each other.
mm. I
Um
mean, there's quite a lot of not to throw a socialist message in there, but I am always want to do that as a European and a socialist. But the thing is, there's a lot of this whole capitalist mindset of like, the ones that want more are always an enemy unless they can be rich. Like basically, until you make it, anyone wanting more is your enemy and your competition.
yeah, no, if you only
And
fuck
after
over
you make it,
1%,
they're
you're
your
terrible. If you
and
fuck
when they
over a
make it,
million,
they're your boss. You know.
exactly, exactly. It's like you steal from one person, you're a criminal. You steal from a million, you're a CEO.
Yeah, basically. But I
Hmm.
mean, it's interesting to think about, right? Because even when it comes to prejudice and hate, there's so many examples of people that had so much going against them because of who they were. Then they get rich, and suddenly everybody's okay with all that stuff they hated about them before. You know?
Yes, exactly. That's the thing is like tattooing has become this like multi-billion dollar industry and
Mm.
suddenly they're happy to have these capitalist ideals. Like they're happy to like I don't know.
Well, that's a
They're
different pet peeve of
fine
mine,
with this.
actually.
They're no longer
Capitalism in the tattoo world. There's a whole I could hold a whole talk on that because there's a whole misunderstanding with how a lot of tattoo artists, and I'm not going to get into it here, but I'll just say my little footnote because I can't help myself. So many tattoo artists run a small business as if they want to be a big corporation. That's not how you sustain a small business.
yeah.
Because
Mm-mm.
they're
Yeah,
always
like
like, no, no, you can't open a shop here next to mine. Fuck you. No, that's how corporations think. That's exactly the way Coca-Cola would react if you want to make a new cola brand. They're gonna be like,
hmm
hey, you better make fucking sure it's not called Coca-Cola. You better make doubly sure it's not our fucking recipe, Jack. Like, that's how you see some tattoo artists react to other tattoo artists,
hmm
which is, I
and
get
it's
that
still that
it's trying to
scarcity.
survive and you're all small businesses, but it's just, you can't survive as a small business by thinking like a corporation. The only thing you can do there is die or become a big corporation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean
That's how
corporations
that
are
I'm not an economic sociologist, but even I know that much about economic sociology and economic politics and the social aspects of economics. That's how it is. Like, but enough about that. We can't go on this foot though because we will have a flag will drop down behind me with with a just full red flag and everything. But I am curious because you said you basically had a apprenticeship waiting for you when you came back to step
yeah.
back to something you talked about a little bit ago. You had an apprenticeship waiting for you when you came back to America after Berlin. But
hmm
were you, and sorry if this is very personal, but I think it's interesting to the topic. Were you at that time already non-binary and trans, or did that happen later, or what was that?
That happened. I didn't come out until I was like on my third shop.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I wasn't as aware in the first shop. I knew that there was something. I
Okay,
always knew
good.
there was something. There was just a lot of other things happening in my life,
Yeah,
especially early
I can
life, and I
imagine.
was like, I need to take a back seat. Because I need to just like stay alive. Let's just stay there. Um, and so by the time I was ready to come out, the second shop I was at, I chose not to because it was the kind of shop that liked to tell really edgy jokes and
Okay.
um,
You were not
sometimes
sure if they were
kind of
gonna hate you
hurtful.
for it, but you were not sure they weren't gonna do it. So like,
Yeah, and it
be
wasn't
extra careful. Like,
like yeah, jokes are fine, but like they are depending, they can feel a bit more like thinly veiled contempt
yeah,
than a joke. Um,
absolutely.
and like if there was a trans person in the shop getting tattooed, they'd walk out of the shop and suddenly there'd be lots of questions and there'd be lots of
Mm,
like snide remarks. So I did not feel comfortable
yeah.
coming out
Oh,
that
yeah, I
shop.
get that. I get that.
Yeah, so the shop that I'm at currently, Evolve Body Art, that was the place that I came out because there were already a lot of trans and non-binary people there.
Okay.
Um, so I felt more comfortable. So I came out there, I like shared my pronouns there, just got a nice clean start
Mm.
when I started there.
That's awesome. But
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 yeah,
Sorry
Yeah,
to ask
no,
something very quite sensitive, but I start. I mean, I don't know how your relationship is to the guy that gave you your apprenticeship in the first studio, but did you, if you think back to it, do you think they would have accepted you for being trans or like?
I think probably. I think they would
Hmm,
have. I think they absolutely would have because I did come out
that's nice.
online. Like the people that I was still chatting with and still like friends with, the ones who really were had taken me under their wing at the shop, like they reached out and were super
Nice.
supportive. Um, but there's another aspect of coming out
Mm,
is like your own like mental health and also just like mental energy. So if you're
mm.
coming out at a shop where people are constantly barraging you with like questions
It'll
and they don't
drain
know.
you.
Well, it drains you, yeah, for sure. Or if they're like coming up to you and you're in the middle of a tattoo to be like, yeah, so do you think you want to like? It's called like bottom surgery, I guess. Do you
You're
think
gonna
you
get
want
a
to
dig
go?
or what? Like,
Can you do
sorry,
my
sorry.
dick?
My humor is so bad sometimes. I'm so badly tired. I'm so sorry, Luca. I just could so vividly imagine this California tattooer just be like, so, like, you're gonna get a dick?
Yeah, it's just so you have to. Yeah, trans people get accused of overthinking things, but it's just we because we have to, like we really have to, because we don't
I would
think
say
about just
the
ourselves,
playing
but we
field
think
is
about
not exactly made for you to not do that. Like, there's a lot of stuff you
now.
need to consider. Like, the,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not.
um,
It would be like
that's
if we were to walk across the street and I got to walk just on a normal side, like pedestrian crossing, but yours has like a little shark pool here. There's a spike trap over here. There's a hill in the middle of it suddenly. Like that's basically how it is, you know?
yeah, no, absolutely. Like we're not just thinking about like our safety, but yeah, we're thinking about our mental health and we're thinking
Mm.
about our energy levels. We're thinking about like showing up for our clients the best way we can. And can we
Yeah.
do that if we're got kind of on edge walking in like, oh God, what stupid
Well,
shit am I gonna
there's also the fact of
say?
living, and I don't want to throw shade on America because it's a very contradictory place, the US, as you
Mm,
spoke about earlier. I don't know if it was during the recording or before, but there's a lot of acceptance of people that are non-binary or trans in the US. But it's still also one of the countries in the world where most trans people get killed every year in developed countries. So there's that whole thing like that you can't. I can't speak for you, but I would imagine you can't really live as a trans person in the US without a certain sense of paranoia.
yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls, unfortunately.
Mm,
So like, say you come out to like a close group of friends. I unfortunately had an unfortunate incident where like I came out to like one of my best friends and he got really drunk and tried to assault me because the same night. I have
jeez.
unfortunate experience of being like a person who enters a new group of friends or a new
Mm,
workplace and just your existence there, it's like, when you have a couple, like two people, they get together, they're perfect for each other, they get married, and they decide to have a child. And suddenly the child's existence
puts
brings
everything
out
in
new
tension.
areas of
Yeah,
each person's personality that makes them completely just
yeah.
incongruent.
It's an
Um,
interesting metaphor, but nonetheless quite apt. I feel like that
yeah,
to try and make sense of it for me and anybody listening or watching right now. You sort of become the tension in the room, like without
yeah,
you wanting
because
to.
I'm a new
Like everybody's on edge purely from you being there and not being part of the norm, so to speak, which feels weird to say about a tattoo crowd.
Yeah. No, but it's like you're a new variable. You're an outlier. Like you're bringing in like a new tension source. You're also like bringing out parts of someone's personality that this group may have never seen before. There may be a prejudice that a person may not even have known they had until they started talking to a trans person. And you just kind of feel like, yeah, that person who's just
I
coming in,
do.
fucking everything up.
Mm.
Uh,
I do feel
and
that sometimes that some people like they don't even realize they have a prejudice sometimes, like you say, but until they have it challenged in a way, which is kind of
yeah,
strange because they'll all things considered, they'll probably be nice people sometimes, but because they've never reflected upon this, because they've just ignored it, they just had a willful ignorance about the whole idea. Suddenly you see this new shitty side of them that they didn't even know they had. Like it's
yeah.
quite baffling sometimes, you know?
Especially like on the the transgender journey. Like every journey is very unique, but it is a journey. There is like a coming out to yourself, but
100.
then everything after that is going to be unique, whether it's like if you change your name, if you use
Mm.
different pronouns, if you start to dress a certain way, if you decide you want to go on hormones or have like a surgery, um, vocal training, like so many things. If you
Yeah.
decide you want to like try to fully like pass and like ingratiate yourself in
Mm.
like passing cisgender society,
Yeah.
like there's so many ways that
Well,
the
that's
trans go.
even that itself is a spectrum, and
Yes,
I think I
exactly.
said this before the recording, but I would like to say it on recording as well. I learned this. It was an important thing for me to learn in my journey of being more open-minded, and I'm very happy to say nowadays I'm way better at it because I always wanted to be this, but I didn't always have the same eloquence with being it, the same expertise in being it. But the thing is, one person once taught me, I can't remember who it was, I also would have absolutely credited them right now. They once taught me that nobody trans or non-binary or anything owes you a certain expression. Like they don't owe you to look or act or behave a certain way. It is a thing that makes them go through life in a way where they at least feel more like they recognize themselves and feel more like themselves. How that is expressed outwardly is a question for them and them, you
Yeah,
know. And I,
yeah,
I
because
couldn't
it's
agree
too
more.
safe.
I couldn't agree more. Like you could sit here and be all dolled up, completely feminine, long hair, everything. You could even have fake tits if you wanted. But if you say you are male, let's say that was it, and not they them, but just to make it even more like of a, scarring, I was almost saying comparison. But and you said that is still an identity I need to recognize and respect because you don't owe a certain way of being. That's the whole thing with that gender is a sociological phenomenon purely.
Hmm.
It's not biology.
Yeah. And it's like you have to ask or you have to listen. And I think that also goes
Mhm.
against like Western polite society, which has like created all these structures so that you never ask.
Yeah.
And you only like look at someone and assume and address them the way that you would politely. Like you say ma'am, you say sir,
Mm.
you say ladies, you say gentlemen,
Mm.
just by looking at them. But we're saying ask first or listen when we say who we are because gender identity and gender expression are two different categories and they
Well,
can be
yeah.
directly opposite each other.
I mean, you can also do a different thing. Like, for example, I knew your name before we spoke today.
Yeah.
And before knowing, because I'd forgotten, because it is on your profile, I know now, but before I'd forgotten what pronouns you have. So I just used your name and also used non-gender specific terms, because that's an
Mhm.
easy way to get around it. And then I asked before we recorded. this that's an easy way to not offend anybody or make them feel less because some people if they don't have a very sensitive day they might just be like, oh, I'm actually so could you use those pronouns, but if they're having a terrible day you don't know what happened to them, they might be very sensitive and it might really harm them, like it can cut deep, not being recognized for what you want to be,
Yeah, for sure.
and thus that'll happen. So it's just it's not, I hate when people say, oh, it's so difficult to remember. Well, then don't. You can even choose not to use pronouns. You can just address them.
Yeah, you can say their name. Yeah,
Shit,
you
man.
can.
Where you live in California, you can just be like, hey, dude, that's anybody. That's a fucking grandma. That's a little girl. It's fucking anybody in California, as far as I've been told.
But it's so good to ask, especially for
Absolutely.
trans
Absolutely.
people.
Although
Like I'll say I will
I
say
hope I
dude.
don't come across as refuting it. I'm not
Oh
refuting
no,
that
no,
it's
I'm
good
just
to ask more.
for the
Okay.
audience, like letting them know you should still ask. So yeah, in
Absolutely.
California, I said dude all the time. My little cousins in New York would give me so much shit because it's like, oh hey dude, hey surfer dude. But I realized as I came out and started having a lot more trans friends, like I needed to
Hmm.
start being more mindful of that and trying to use more gender neutral language when addressing people, even just
Hmm.
like, no bro, no dude. Try to say like, hey pal, hey
The whole
buddy.
So we hit another one of my pet peeves there, and I think it's mainly the US and the UK that do this, but like that even girls will call me bro, will call each other bro, and like cisgendered women will call each other bro and stuff like that, and everybody just says bro all the fucking time now. I'm like, stop. I'm absolutely for the evolution of language. I get slang. I'm not the type that nobody minds slang at all. The bro shit
Mm,
has got to stop.
yeah. It
Sorry.
gives the
I know that's not going to get out. It's not going to start a revolution, but just, I had to get that out audibly right now. The bro shit
Okay,
has
glad
got
you
to
got that
stop.
out for sure. It's nice.
Sorry, Luca, hijacking your point to make my own. No, but yeah, no, but I get what you mean. Like the but I think it's easy to, like I said, that people think it is. Like it, it's not.
Yeah, no, it is.
Most
We're
people don't
trying to
even
teach people
realize
that,
how little they use pronouns normally when they speak,
especially they them pronouns, like singular
especially
they
if
them
they do.
pronouns. They don't realize how often they actually use it.
No, they
They
use more. We often use those more than the gendered ones. People just don't fucking realize it.
Yeah, I know. And we're just saying, hey, just pay a little more attention. And that's it. Like
That's
again,
it.
look inward,
But
be a little mindful, be paying attention to your words and I don't know, use the four agreements, that kind of stuff. Um,
yeah.
but it is like we're trying to get it to a place of it being like bare minimum effort to just ask
Hmm.
someone's pronouns or listen. But right now, like some people see it as a mountain to climb, that it's like
It's fucking
completely
strange.
tearing them away from like the life, the society they've ever known. And it's like it shows you how comfortable people are and
Hmm.
how little they're asked to change, how little they're asked to see things from another person's perspective. When many of us grew up immediately having to see things from other people's perspective because our
I
own
think
perspective never documented, they were never like shown in media, so we always had to pretend to see things from another person's point of view.
I think it was Sigmund Bauman, a famous sociologist that died some years ago, that said this, not about trans people, but this sort of strikes me right now, that people are inherently lazy. We seek comfort and the easy solution all the time. And that's one of the biggest reasons for evil in the world sometimes. Like it's one of
Yeah,
the biggest reasons why people don't care to take extra care to anyone else that are different from themselves is because they like the comfort, be like, no, I live around other people that are just like me, so I don't have to do fuck all. And that's just
yeah,
inherent laziness.
yeah. And also, wow, what luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Luck
That's the
that
other
you
part.
happen
You
to be
didn't do
born
fuck
in the
all to make
exact,
that happen. Like,
yeah, like in the exact body, in the exact culture, in the exact country or town, the exact family,
there's a level of
everything is
luck and
so
privilege
fluent.
there people are quite blind to at times. Like
Yeah,
I realize quite heavily that I'm so lucky, despite being living in a country where I don't like tattoos as much as certain other places. It's not terrible. I'm a white cisgendered man. I'm pretty fucking lucky walking around Scandinavia because nobody's often gonna say shit to me,
yeah,
you know.
like
But if I was
lottery.
brown living here, if I was a woman, if I was anything else, there would be so many more variables to consider constantly.
Hmm.
The worst thing that's happened to me is that I'm red haired. Like,
Yeah, which is funny because like I often say that there are as many. So I sometimes talk about like intersexual people, and there are
yeah,
as many heads as there are intersexual people in the world. So when people say like, oh,
fair enough.
there's no, this is
But
like six people in the
intersex
world.
are people born with either both or non-specific genitalia, male female biology, right? It's the
Yeah,
physical. They have both or some combination,
yeah.
like
Or sometimes
biologically
it's less
speaking.
physical and more like genetic coding or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
other.
yeah. That's what I mean
Um,
as well. I at least know of one
because
woman where she
intersex.
had basically had
Um,
balls inside where her ovaries should be, and technically that makes it intersex, even if she has a vagina and all that stuff that comes with that. No ovaries. She had testicles inside. Like it happens. Like we're
yeah,
all made from the same genetic makeup, and if something doesn't order itself in the traditional sense like we're used to, stuff happens, man.
yeah, and the thing is that that statistic is probably higher because like the majority of people don't find out they're intersex until they're having extreme
Oh,
health
as a
issues.
social scientist, I would also say statistics, people should be more mindful when they read them because so many people don't reply to them or don't reply truthfully to them. So they're always misrepresenting.
I saw this great meme and it was like a statistical results and it was 99.7% of people said that they love responding to surveys and like 0.3% said that they prefer to throw them away. Wow, a lot of people love replying to surveys.
That's a great one. That's the
Yeah.
best social scientific nerd joke I've heard in a while. That's actually, thank you for that one, Luca. Oh, that's good.
Oh,
But
that
yeah,
is.
but that's the point. Like you can't trust surveys all the time, and oftentimes people that are more angry, I would say,
Mhm.
that's how it feels to me at least sometimes, are more likely to reply to a survey about specific
Yeah.
topics. Whereas with other topics, it's often people that feel they can say something and make a positive change to reply. And it's quite interesting. For example, if you were to make a survey about trans people, I would almost guarantee you a lot of the people replying to that survey are gonna be angry.
Yeah, they're gonna be angry and they're gonna be cisgender.
Yeah,
Um,
most likely.
because
Because a lot of trans
like
people will be nervous to reply because even though it might be anonymous, there's still always going to be a risk to them in speaking out
yeah.
and in taking part and stuff like that, in being even just known by a researcher for who they are and
Mhm.
where they are and all that stuff. So there's a
Also,
lot
for
more.
living in a home that isn't safe, and if they're to find that response
Yeah,
before it got mailed out, it could make them unsafe.
yeah.
A large percentage of trans people are unhoused, so they won't be able to get that survey anyway, or
Also
they're
that.
impoverished in other ways.
There, there's also another thing which also happened with the tattoo world that is just starting to sort of change, and you could ask Beverly about that if you and her ever strike up conversation. But the tattoo world was so scorned by the negatively biased research that happened before the 80s, especially, that for decades on, they didn't really care to interact with the research or scientific world like at all if they could. So that meant that all tattoo research that came out was sort of misrepresenting to some
Yeah,
extent.
yeah.
And only the social sciences really got any luck because some scientists got interested in tattoos themselves and sort of became inside people, and thus we got the ball moving again. But a lot of this
Mhm.
shit, especially within the medical field, is lacking behind. And it's the same thing with trans people. A lot of trans people, I imagine, will not want to take part in service in that because they feel like they're just going to get misrepresented again. Because there's
Yeah,
still a
for
lot of
sure.
negative
Or there might
bias.
be insidious reasons
Yeah, yeah,
for
all
the.
that sort of stuff. Like there's just a lot of stuff that makes it not just an easy, oh yeah, of course, I'm just gonna participate in this Harvard survey or whatever it might be, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And yeah, the US has like the US tattoo industry has really struggled to like work with government entities and like
Oh,
regulating
that's
agencies.
a
But I
different
am
thing as
going
well
to
with
like,
how
I do
legal
want
it
to
is
give a
and
shout
stuff like
out
that.
though to the Association of Professional
Yeah,
Tattooists because
APT, yeah.
like EPT has like really been trying to just like organize people and getting not just tattooers but also like researchers, scientists together to have these
I do
conversations.
as much as I don't agree with the liberal political standing, I do love what they do and I do follow them and Ben, and I do
Mhm.
like a lot of what they say. Like, of
Yeah.
course, I won't agree with everything. I'm an atheist, socialist. I can't agree with everything, but the whole way that you have a stronger union, they do a lot more to work with scientists, both within the social and STEM sciences. It's
Mhm.
amazing to see. But also that they are trying to open the eyes of the tattoo world that unionizing is not a bad thing.
Yeah. No, for
It
sure. Like
really
organizing
isn't. I know
people.
that is basically going in one ear and out the other when it comes from a Danish person, basically Union Central in Scandinavia.
Oh,
But you know,
yeah.
it's not a bad thing to have somebody that can help fight for certain things because as a tattoo artist, you're not going to know everything to do with labor laws or anything like that. Your
Yeah.
rights,
I know you
fuck
think you
all.
do, but
Yeah.
you don't.
There's a reason we have social scientists as well. That's because that's what we do, understanding the social fucking aspects of the world.
Yes.
A lot of people would like to think that anybody can just do that. Be my guest. But yeah, I would like to say we have a bit more of an overarching and uh, better viewpoint. We're better at seeing the whole picture, at least, I would argue, and the smaller details and recognizing, for example, these similarities and also when there are not similarities, but when how to better recognize and respect these things, differences as well. Yeah. But
Mm.
also the APT you did hold. I sadly couldn't go because there's a massive time
It's 2
difference,
a.m.
and
Yeah.
I do like to sleep. But
But
you recently held a seminar for them about being transgender in the tattoo industry, right?
yeah, yeah, I wanted to do, and like Ben Shaw and I had talked about it last year, and he really like followed through and said, "Here, I will give you
Oh,
a
nice,
platform. I will advertise for you. I will like pay for your first year of membership so that you can do this for
nice.
APT." But we've been talking about like trans issues, not just like me being trans, in my private life, but also like how that intersects with tattoo industry, whether it's your
Mm.
artists, your staff, your clients, your community, and like I just wanted to share ways that you can like improve even just your client intake system to be just a little bit more accessible and a little bit more affirming to a wider demographic of people, and how doing something as simple as putting a place for pronouns on a consent form, or putting like two name boxes, one for the name you go by and one for the name that's on your ID, can make a world of difference for how a person perceives this shop, perceives
And
you
for all the
as
old school
select.
illegal biker shops, that also helps you with criminal clients because they can put the cover name and they can put the one they want it
Yeah, if you
under.
have a street name, yeah, absolutely. Like it is
Like
for
fucking
everybody.
Cue Ball can come in and he can put down John so you don't report him with his warrants, and then it's all good. Like
Yeah, no, it's like this
no,
isn't just for
but
trans people. This is for
jokes aside,
everybody.
I definitely agree that these small steps go a long way
Yeah,
with
they
anything
do.
really.
Like not just for trans clients. All you're saying is we respect all people, and we're gonna put our money where our mouth is. Like
I
we're
mean,
not
it'll be
afraid
the
to
same.
say it's
It'll be the
important
same
to
as
us.
saying, "Hey, put it's the same as when you put a section. Do you have any pre-existing conditions we need to know about?" That
Yeah,
also
yeah.
goes
It's
a
like
long way.
we want to know about you, and we want to address you respectfully. And we care about this. Like we care about you as a person. We care about your feeling of safety and affirmation. Just like we would for anyone, because yeah, we want to ask for certain details because we want to give you a safe experience,
Yeah,
and this is just an extension of that safe experience.
that's what I mean. Like it's just an extension of the whole. Hey, let's make you comfortable. Let's make you feel home and respected
Mhm.
and safe.
Yeah, for sure. And I had great participants, people with amazing
Nice.
ideas, amazing questions. Some like, devil's advocate stuff, like, well, if you're saying like to be respectful of this person, like, can you say that if you're calling people, like I was talking about
Well,
TERFs,
I do love I do love being the devil's advocate sometimes. I did that a lot to
It
former
is
students I had.
it's nice and it keeps me on my toes for sure, but also like playing devil's advocate when talking about minority and marginalized
Mm,
populations isn't as effective
no, not
because
at all.
it's also not clever because
No.
this is already in the discourse. Like you're just saying stuff that we're
Oh
barraged
yeah, I
with
would
all.
never do it about a marginalized group.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I did do it
like some
about gun
media
laws to an
talking shit
American
about
student
trans.
once.
What'd you say?
I did do it about gun laws to an American student once.
Oh, that must have been fun.
It was. I mean, he was a bit hard-headed, but he's a good kid. That's not it. I was teaching intro to sociology in Scotland, and I tried to make him realize that his viewpoint, as normal as he finds it, being from Texas, is quite alien to a lot of other places in the world, thinking that the private gun ownership is the way forward and stops anything, and that science would disagree as well. And then he was like, but what about it? And then I can't even remember what I said, but just basic like challenging. Okay, but let's say we go along with what you do, and
Yeah.
let's say
And this is effective, like effective devil's advocate, because if he lived in Texas, then that was his world. Like that was
yeah,
his universe. Private gun ownership is going to stop violence. It's going to keep you safe. Don't come for our guns. This is an American right. This is American culture. So like you are challenging a universal viewpoint. But protecting transphobic people is already a universal viewpoint.
yeah.
So it's not.
It's not as much devil's advocate as more momentarily agreeing with the status quo in that case.
It's less devil's advocate and more bootlicker. Like he wasn't. He was just like he was very respectful, but like we had to have that conversation. Like if someone, like I'm not going to be respectful of someone by like calling them like a TERF, which is a trans exclusionary radical
Yeah,
feminist.
no, 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 no.
Like
Don't like them.
especially when they say they are, when they uphold that title very proudly
Ay,
for
ay, ay.
themselves, I'm gonna call them that. And it's just like if someone is saying something really racist, they're probably not going to want to be called racist, but doesn't matter because if you are, you
Yeah.
are.
Mm,
Yeah. Uh,
agreed. Like that's not really a choice you make. Like you make the choice to say it. That's not, you don't get to choose the effect that has on how you're viewed. Like,
yeah, exactly.
that's called
Um,
consequences.
yeah, exactly. It's like, no, you're gonna say something that's gonna ruffle some feathers. Like, prepare for some feathers, I guess. Um, but yeah, overall, it was a really, really great conversation.
Awesome.
Together my little presentation. I got it peer reviewed by
Oh
like
wow.
several people. Yeah. I mean, yeah, people who like speak about trans issues in
Oh,
general or
nice.
speak
Very
about like
nice.
diversity, equity, and inclusion work um for various organizations, and also just other
Nice.
body artists like piercers, tattooers, and just trans people in general. Um, also a public health specialist, just like have I like covered my bases? So it was a really fun experience, and I
Damn,
really want to do
you
more,
really covered your
honestly.
bases indeed with this one. I wish I could have
I
been there. It sounds like it was a great time. Honestly,
Yeah, no, it's really fun, and it was just meant to
next
be
one
very.
you'll have to hold earlier in the day so I can attend.
I will. Yeah, I was like, I was holding it for APT, so all tattooers, and I was like,
Yeah.
no one's gonna be up at 8 a.m.
But
So
most are gonna be in the States, so it's way. I do get why you put it at that time because it's way after work. They might have had some dinner already. They're gonna sit down and be chill, you
right,
know.
or if they're tattooers, they're like just getting off work and they're like
Yeah.
sitting in the studio or they're in their car,
Uh,
and so like it worked for timing for that purpose as
yeah.
well. But yeah, I'd like to hold more seminars like that. I'm
Like
excited.
I would imagine it would be more difficult to make you not do it.
Yeah, no, I feel really, really passionately about it. There are a lot of different things that I've explored in the tattoo industry, ways that I can like help make it better. But this feels really pressing right
Yeah,
now for me, especially.
I would agree because it's interesting because marginalized groups have always been drawn towards tattooing, and tattooing has also itself. It's at least us who are way into it, not just people who get like one or two on the wrist or ankles and that. Of course, they're great clients as well, and I respect their tattoo journeys as well, but they're less in the world, so to speak. But we've always been marginalized groups in that, and people are drawn to it, especially within marginalized groups, whether it's chronic illness, whether it's different gender identities, whether it's fucking different ethnic identities, whatever. Marginalized groups you see drawn towards tattooing and how they can sort of cement their being and their right to being, and also this idea of the authentic self. They're already
Mhm.
people more reflexive about their identity, forced to be in some cases, because of prejudices. So of course it's drawn to them.
Yeah,
But
well, I mean,
and
like
with trans
the
people,
whole
like there's a
go.
lot of trans people and queer people that basically almost kept tattooing alive back in when it was almost fucking prejudiced out of existence in the Western world, in the UK and the States, because they were already on the fringes. So they were just like, yeah, come on, yeah, fuck man, come on. Both there were both queer and trans tattoo artists and clients even back then,
Hmm.
way back when, and people forget that sometimes. Like it's sort
Yeah,
of
like they couldn't
trans
have
people have sort of
shuffle,
been part of that world for way longer than people realize. They didn't just pop out and suddenly they all went like, no, no, you're trans if you get a mohawk and you've got lots of tattoos and a leather jacket. Let's go. No, that's not how it worked, man. It's not. It's way longer of a history and more complex and beautiful than that. Way more.
no tattooing. I had a slide that just shared a basic list of some cultures that have had tattooing,
Mm,
um, and it's just like dozens and dozens and dozens of countries, ancient cultures, contemporary cultures that have continued to have tattooing, and like we were starting to talk about before the recording, like there is a correlation between cultures that have had tattooing and cultures that have had like queerness and also multiple genders. And all of them were stamped out. All of them were considered barbaric. All of them were considered
mm,
demonic by like Christian eyes. And so, as there was more colonization throughout the world and more westernizing of these cultures or stamping out in general, um, like even if you just think of ancient Rome and all the statues and pieces of art and artifacts that were demolished and defaced for showing not just like nude bodies and sex and sexuality, but also like examples of multi-gender bodies and
mm,
like queer tableaus. All of it was
mm.
destroyed because it challenged like binary Christian identity
Yeah.
and like good and evil identity. Um, but like tattooing was definitely lumped in with all of that. It was considered like defacement. It was
It's a weird
considered
one
like
because
a whole,
except for one short period where crusaders would get tattoos, it was basically outlawed by especially the Catholic Church. But there was a short period with some crusades where they were like, no, no, get tattoos to prove how Christian you are when you go down and slaughter infidels. And then a pope just at one point went like, nope. And then he excommunicated them to South America when they were trying to invade that. And it was like, okay, what the fuck?
right? And then it like came sort of back. It like
Yeah.
made its way into like European culture
Oh,
through
it never went
explorers and
away. It just went underground. Is the more
well,
correct
yeah,
way to describe
underground, I
it.
should say. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
That's correct.
Because, but that's because there was the misconception in a lot of tattoo history way back when, and we're gonna I'll end this note very quickly because this is not what we're talking about today. But it was a misconception for a long time that James Cook discovered tattooing in Polynesia and brought it to Europe. And then but
That's
that's
what I
not
was
the
gonna say.
case.
Yeah.
He brought a new kind of tattooing to Europe and sort of by doing that reinvigorated tattooing in Europe. But
Yeah.
tattooing was not gone from Europe at that time either. You'll actually be able to read about this a bit in Matt's book that I recommended you
I'm excited.
a little bit. He's quite great at that. And there's also some about queer tattooing in that in his books because he's quite adamant about people forget quite often that queer tattooing is queer people in tattoo world are actually quite an intrinsic part of it, and it's almost been part of helping it survive in modern day
Oh,
in
no,
Monday.
I love that.
But I
Now,
don't
when they
remember
talk,
too many of the facts and dates and all that, and I don't want to be told off by Matt or somebody else. I don't want to get too into it because I'm so bad remembering the dates sometimes of and certain names of that of people that were prominent queer tattoo artists and that back then. Namely in London, Matt especially talks about. But yeah, it's been intrinsic in it, and even in other people's works on tattooing and tattoo identity from the social sciences, queer identity often pops up whether you want it to or not. Like it's so like it's inescapable.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
And I
even in
don't mean that
America.
in any bad way. I mean that in a way that people need to realize that queer people have been in part of the two world for longer than you think, and they've never done anything to ruin it.
No, no, you're right. Like they kept it alive. And even in the US, some of the first like bigger shop owners, the very first shops that were actually established, like brick and mortar, were queer owned as well.
I
Uh,
don't know the details enough to confirm or deny that, but I'll take your word for it on that one.
yeah. Only because I was just reading about it. I was like
oh,
just
fair,
reading
fair.
about it. Um,
But regardless, both in the States and the UK and other places, queer tattoo artists have been part of it for many generations and years and years and
yeah,
years and years. I've been a part of society. There was one guy, I can't remember the name. I wish I could. There's an episode of Matt's podcast called Beneath the Skin, and they talk
yeah.
about him actually in a few episodes, but there's one specifically about this guy. He was tattooing for the Hells Angels, their main tattoo guy, but he was also queer and an English professor.
That's so cool.
But he's one of the legends, and people didn't know this for years. But that's the thing, whenever people are like, no, tattooing didn't used to be. No, you were all like art students there. Fuck, man. Is it Ed Hardy? He fucking taught art classes when he retired from tattooing, and he did it before tattooing as well, and during. Like, they're all fucking art kids. A lot of the old
Yeah,
legends that people like to tote and
sure.
brag about. That they're not. The bikers went to them for tattoos. Yes, they were not necessarily fucking bikers themselves.
No, and even like I was just reading about Lou the Jew in New York
No.
City. Like he kind of like created flash sheets in the U.S. and like his
Oh.
background was in wallpaper design. Like that's what he was doing before tattooing. Like
That's
he
the
was a
thing. Like,
graphic designer.
there's a lot of knowing the history more helps people sometimes realize that some of all this prejudice that comes around is fucking silly and stupid. And I've talked about it before with, for example, black people in the tattoo world, where there's so much prejudice towards that as well, and misconceptions about what is possible with more melanated skin and all this bullshit. You know, it's the same thing here. Like learning just a bit of the history, you'll soon realize that, well, all this prejudice is bullshit. It doesn't exist. It never existed. These weird fucking ideas we developed in, I would say, the 70s and the 80s, especially, but also in the 90s, that
Mhm.
suddenly closed it off to anybody that's not cisgendered and white in a way, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, because this the like the rebirth of tattooing through, like you said, like exploration in French Polynesia, it coming back, it becoming more popular with military, it becoming more popular with aristocracy and some royalty. Like it like tattooing was one of the things that was allowed to come back after being like eradicated, because it was of use to masculine identity. It like made you more masculine to have tattoos after a time. Like it was proof of your military service. It was proof of like your exploration of the
At least,
world.
I mean, I can at least like I follow the theory quite well, and I would agree to a large extent. But I will say there was also a lot of women still getting tattooed even back then. But you are correct in it was mainly a masculine
Yeah.
form of expression.
Well, depending on where you were, but like,
Yeah,
I mean, at least in the US, if you were a heavily tattooed woman, you were in the circus, like you were in the freak
Yeah,
show. That's you were
basically,
not
yeah,
like you were not,
absolutely.
obviously you were not in the military, but you were not like part of polite society.
Well,
You were,
I will say this, and I'm not as strong in it as Matt Lotter is, but there were even women on the aristocracy that had more than one or two tattoos even back then, in the
yeah,
1800s. So I mean, there are some proof, but you're still correct in saying it was mainly a masculine activity. But I think it's my social scientific background. I just like to be a pedantic asshole. There were still also women getting tattooed back then, but you are correct in saying it was mainly seen as a masculine thing. And you can also see the remnants of that as we go up into more modern history of it being seen mainly as a man thing and all that, especially being heavily tattooed was very much seen as a masculine thing, and women that were very heavily tattooed were seen as sort of broken or deformed and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
or like
absolutely,
masculine.
yeah, yeah, or like masculine, yeah. So you're absolutely correct. I just wanted to add in the footnote of
No, thank you. Out of curiosity, like on that subject, Ben, like as far as like aristocratic women who are tattooed, do you think there was a correlation with queerness as well? Like, is there any
I
documentation
don't know
that
enough on that part to really talk too much about it. I wouldn't be surprised, I would say, if there were more of that also hidden away, because the aristocracy loved to hide away everything they fucking could from anybody not part of it. Um,
Mhm.
I would imagine there would be some. I've at least heard of these diaries people thought where they would talk about these orgies they would hold, where they would walk around in fucking togas and shit like that, and all fucking shag each other and show the tattoos off they would normally hide under their clothing and stuff like that.
Yeah. I just
Uh,
imagine all of it being in Brighton. I don't know
but I
why.
don't know, but I don't know enough to speak of any specific like queerness going on. But
I was
again,
curious.
with what I know at least about how frequently it pops up, even going back through history within all human culture, I wouldn't be surprised if anybody could tell me that, yeah, yeah, a lot of the women that got tattooed had these secret languages with them or whatever. But I don't know enough to say to confirm or deny anything. But
All
but
right.
but at least I know that some of them were. Even Winston Churchill's mother had a tattoo, for
That's
example.
cool.
Yeah. As far as I know, at least, oh, Matt's gonna correct me or something if I've got this wrong. But as far as I know, Winston Churchill's mother had a Ouroboros tattoo on one wrist,
Okay, that's really awesome.
for example. And apparently Winnie had a tattoo as well, but I can't remember what. But yeah, yeah, but it's just the point that you're absolutely correct in mainly masculine, but there were also even among the aristocracy women that got tattooed as well. But I think the thing you're absolutely correct in is that it was seen as such a masculine thing that women that got tattooed were under even stricter, you know, pressure to keep it hidden and not just reveal it to anyone.
hmm Yeah,
Uh,
so that like that found its way to like still fit within the
yeah,
confines of this new world.
absolutely, absolutely.
Whereas like queerness and transgenderness like
Well,
doesn't.
but
And
you can see another thing that supports the point you're making is some of the feminist research into tattoos earlier on shows that a lot of feminists, and especially trans or queer feminists, use tattoos to say like fuck the patriarchal norms about female identity, and they would purposefully ruin, again in quotation marks, their bodies in a patriarchal sense to claim this right to have this non-traditional female identity.
oh yeah, no, I've seen some of the
And
best
that's another
tat.
way in which tattooing has been heavily a part of at least the trans and queer worlds as well. That sort of reclaim this their own personal sense of female or queer or trans identity from
Mm-hmm.
these now norms constructed by the patriarchy, which is
Oh yeah,
awesome.
some of my favorite tattoos that I've seen are when like AFAB people, like female bodied people, uh get tattoos that are kind of like, like over their junk and lower stomach, and it's like a big demon with a salivating mouth. Just like if you're gonna get in on this, like you're definitely terrified. You're gonna be terrified.
It's gonna be a threesome, dude.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I love that stuff. Like completely just like owning your own body. Like this is what I feel like. This is what feels right for me.
But
Um,
that's also, I think, one of the beautiful parallels between trans identity and being authentic to yourself in that way, and tattooing that is about authenticity and owning and claiming the right to own your own body.
Yeah, for sure. And like define expectation.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
I feel like it should all align. We should all be like bedfellows together so easily. Like we all say like, I don't know, fuck the government, fuck capitalism, fuck patriarchy. Like we should all be in on it together, but there's still just like this disconnect a lot of times. People are like, no, like you're making it about yourself. You're like taking away from others. And again, that scarcity that keeps coming up. Or like, no, we just tattoo anybody. We shouldn't have to like say or do anything. But by default, like we can't trust that. Like trans people can't trust that you truly do like respect. Like I've had many clients, a lot of my clients are trans now, who say that they've had at least one really terrible experience at a shop that purported to be a safe space and
Uh,
affirming, and that was proven to be not the case very quickly,
mm,
by big tattooers who like talk about how great they are and how they're like they love trans people, blah blah blah, but then they're on the table and they're being told like the worst shit ever about their own identity. Um,
oh man.
and so I'm just saying here, like, here's some things you need to know. You can ask whatever questions you want so that you ask them to me, someone who's like grounded and ready to hear the question and give you an answer, at least to the best of my ability and best of my knowledge, or direct you to another place. Here are ways that you can just make slight adjustments and just mainly just don't make assumptions about
Yeah.
like someone's
Don't be a
identity.
dick.
Main takeaway.
Yeah.
Like
Don't be a
I
dick.
always call
That's
someone
it.
they them until I'm told differently.
Yeah. Right. I've been keeping you for a long time now. So to start around us off on a lighter note, because I think it's been a beautiful and deep discussion. We had some laughs along the way, but I always like to end it off a bit more silly, just to get a nice feeling before we say goodbye to one another. So
Yeah,
I was wondering, you do academic tattoos. What's the silliest tattoo you've done?
the silliest tattoo I've done. Oh man, I should have prepared. Um, okay. You know what? Like this one, I love the memory of this tattoo. It was my first shop. I was barely out of my apprenticeship. And this guy, this really sweet guy walks in. He knows exactly what he wants. He says, all right, listen, I want a piece of toast, wearing sunglasses, holding a beer, skating on a piece of butter. I'm like,
That's awesome, man.
that? He's like,
Oh, I
yes.
love weird tattoos. Oh, that's
And it
awesome.
turned out great. I was so happy.
I mean, I get why. That's a tattoo you remember forever when a guy just comes in. Hey,
I will never forget that.
watch this shit.
I am here. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do. Like my whole background in concept art and working with directors and production
Uh,
designers. Like, yeah, what do you got? What do you want? Like, I felt
Fucking
like all of that had been leading up to that moment.
give me a butter skating piece of cool toast any day.
It's so great. It looked like an
Mm.
anti-drug campaign. It was amazing.
That would be the weirdest anti-drug campaign I've ever fucking heard.
Don't be like toast. Eat.
Yeah, that would have to be the angle. Don't be like toast. Or stop drinking or you'll be toast. Though that wouldn't work. See, toast is cool as fuck, man. For the
Okay,
sound of
I'm gonna find a picture of that drawing, and that's
it.
I'm gonna make stickers of
Careful,
that.
I'll put it in the thumbnail if you send me that. Right.
I'll find it.
We're sadly at the end now.
Yeah.
And last thing I want to do is, first of all, thank you so much for being on, Luca. I've
Thank
thoroughly
you.
enjoyed this so much. I hope you did
Thank-
as well.
Oh yeah.
And secondly, please plug any and everything you have going on. I'll do my best to put all I can in the description of both Spotify and YouTube. But please let people know where they can find more Luca and what you're doing.
Yeah, okay. So on Instagram, I am Lowbar Luka. That's LOWBARLUKA. My website is lowbarart.com. Those are pretty much the ways to find me. I'm a tattooer based in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States, at Evolve Body Art. So if you ever want to come get a tattoo, come on over. Um, and yeah, if you have any more questions about these topics and you just want to reach out, feel free to send me a DM or send me a message through my website. You can also just email directly at luca@lowbarart.com. Would love to hear from you. I love having discussions like this. Maz, this has been awesome.
Thank
Like,
you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it so much. This was a blast.
Well, and to everybody, anybody watching or listening in, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this awesome episode together with Luka Weinberger. It's always great to talk to people from marginalized communities, even within our own tattoo world, and to help people realize the beauty of diversity and how important it is that we keep fighting for diversity and the innovation and cultural longevity it brings with it, honestly. And it's also great to hear about parts of the history of tattooing that some people might forget or be ignorant to, that are quite important to how it survived previously. But to bring us swiftly to the future instead of past history and events, there's going to be a bit of an extra delay for the next episode, as I'm going to Gods of Ink in Frankfurt am Main in Germany, the 2025 edition, for anybody watching this much later on in time. So the next episode won't be out that week when the convention is happening, but it will be out only a few days after I get back from the convention. And it's got to be quite the episode as well. I've had the good fortune to interview Dakota Wyke, a man many of you probably know better as Inked Abroad, his massive online brand where he reviews tattoos, and he does a lot more than just review tattoos. Personally, I'm way more interested in how he aims to document as much as he can about tattoo culture, history, and the people within it. And we're going to hear a lot about that in the episode. And we're going to be talking a lot about his future plans and ambitions with this desire and project to document the tattoo world and why he wants to do that as well. So there's something to look forward to indeed for next episode, and I can't wait to have you all enjoy it in a few weeks' time. It's going to be a little extra, as I told you, but it's definitely coming out very soon after I get back from the Gods of Ink. So stick around for that, and we'll see you soon.